Hi, this is David Dickens, and today we are going to tackle two different listener questions. Scott recently paid off his house, and he's got extra money every month and wants some ideas on what to do with it. And Jim's wife just inherited some money, part of which is an IRA, and he's just got some tax questions. So we're going to tackle both of those. Hopefully there's something in here that you can use. I'll go get Walter, and we'll get started.
Back for another edition of Cover Your Assets KC. Walter Storholt here alongside David Dickens, President, Wealth Advisor of Creative One Advisors Group, serving you in the Kansas City area and beyond. Find us online at creativeoneadvisorsgroup.com. Mailbag edition of the show today. Going to tackle two great questions, as Dave teased us about a few minutes ago. And looking forward to those, David. But how are you doing in other ways today?
Doing good.
Nice.
Enjoying spring. Got the Olympics out of the way. What do we got going? March Madness coming up. Oh, my gosh.
That's going to be fun. Yeah.
A lot going on. Hopefully my team makes it.
Yeah. How's Missouri shaping up these days?
Well, I liked them a lot better before the game that they got destroyed in last night down in Norman, Oklahoma. So that wasn't so good, but seems like we ought to be in the big dance for at least a game or hopefully two.
Yeah, hopefully you can make it. You know, if you make it to that second weekend, that's pretty exciting, right? That's just makes you feel like you stayed there a little while, not just showed up and walked right back out the door.
Exactly. But as Missouri fans, we're kind of used to a lot of different things. So
yeah, going to be fun to see how that shapes up later in the month. My Tar Heels are not doing too bad. We had a big win over Duke this year. We've had some injuries to battle a little bit. So big game against Duke again this weekend.
I know that's coming up. I may have to tune into that one.
Yeah, the little rematch from that last-second victory we had. But we'll be in Duke's house this time, so I think it'll be a little bit of a tougher ask.
I've seen that game. I think it was probably 20 years ago. I was in Cameron to see North Carolina and Duke. And
that's pretty cool.
Pretty
That's
amazing
a great experience.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
I've had my handful of games covering back when I worked in sports media that I got to experience inside of Cameron. I've seen games in Cameron from three different perspectives. Never as a fan, actually, but I've seen it from the crow's nest where we broadcast from up high. I've seen it as a member of the working media right along in front of the students at media tables. That's fun because you're getting bashed by them the entire game. And then I've also shot with a camera down under the basket and right on the floor level before. And as a Tar Heel, I got to say, when you're in Cameron, just the energy makes you want to be a fan. Like
it's intense.
It's easy to see why recruits get wowed by that place because it's small, intense, and pretty crazy. So, yeah, it's awesome.
Well, I'll be tuning in on Saturday.
Very cool. Well, I got to say, go Heels. To get that out there.
Just to get it out.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's get to business today. Those two listener questions. The first one from Scott, and Scott says we recently paid off our house, David, which was a great feeling. But now we have about $3,000 that we don't spend every month. We're already maxing out our retirement accounts, and I don't want to just leave it in our checking account. So, good problem to have, I guess. Where should we be putting this money?
That is a good problem to have, Scott. And nothing we're going to say right now, Scott, is specific investment advice for you. But I'm going to try to give you a couple of relatively easy to exercise ways to make something happen with that $3,000 a month. So but I just want to clear up, though. I've had people in my office that say they're maxing their retirement accounts out. And what they meant was they were putting in just enough to get the entire match from their company, which is a long way from maxing out your contribution. So if you got a 401k at work, we don't know how old you are, but I'm going to assume that you are over 50, maybe mid-60s. So maxing out your 401k would be the $24,500 plus the $8,000 catch-up, so about $31,500. And if your spouse is working, she can put another $31,500 in. So, maybe you're maxing out to the tune of $63,000, and that's pretty awesome. Maybe you don't work for a company with an IRA, with a 401k. You just have an IRA or a Roth. So your max contribution is $7,500 plus $1,100 of catch-up, so about $8,600 per spouse. So circling all the way back around to where your question started, we're going to assume that you truly are maxing out your retirement accounts, and now you got this extra $3,000 a month that you don't want to spend. You want to save it up for a rainy day or a little more beautiful retirement. Easiest, lowest shelf is to walk into your bank or your credit union and get a CD with it, because it's very likely to pay more than your money market account. And so maybe it's a 2, 3, 4 year CD, FDIC insured. Credit unions are NCUSIF insured, arguably the same thing. And you're getting a fixed rate for a fixed term, and you don't have to sweat any details. But you probably can't get a CD that you can add to every month. So maybe what you do is build it up over the course of 3 months, 6 months, or a year, and then take out that CD. The second thing, and it's more of my favorite, if you were sitting across from me in my office and asked me, well, what do you think I should do, not knowing anything about you, I would say, well, probably opening a brokerage account at Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard, whatever your broker of choice is. They have a wide variety of money market mutual funds, some that have treasuries, some that are regular money market funds. And those are going to be yielding you, I don't know, 3.25%, 3.5%. But if the Fed reduces rates over the next year, well, those rates are going to come down. You could buy stocks or bonds in the form of a mutual fund or an ETF. What I don't particularly like about the money market fund, whether that's a CD at a bank or at one of these brokerage companies, is that money is taxable income at your highest tax bracket. It's at your marginal tax bracket. Whereas if you buy a stock or a bond ETF and you hold it for a year, now the bond ETF is going to spin off income, which is also a taxable income. But if you hold that, let's say a stock ETF for more than a year, that should it'll produce either a long-term capital gain or a long-term capital loss. Your goal, obviously, is to have long-term capital gain associated with it. And those are taxed advantageously. So instead of at your highest marginal tax bracket, if you happen to be in the 10 or 12% bracket, in round numbers, you're going to pay 0% capital gains tax at the federal level. And then depending on what state you live in, you pay them some money or not. Short-term capital gain, you hold something for less than a year, it's just going to be taxed as ordinary income as well. So you do have some possibilities, some tax advantages in a brokerage account. And if you really have a time horizon of 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years, that's probably something you really want to check out hard. And then if you don't need the money and you're sure you don't need the money, the fixed annuity is issued by and guaranteed by an insurance company. But the specialty treatment here is the income, the interest that you earn off of that is tax deferred until you take the money out. So you do get a little bit of a tax, not necessarily a tax savings, but a tax deferral. Let's just say that once you retire, you think your tax bracket is going to be lower. Well, maybe that's the time that you liquidate the fixed annuity. You pay that income tax on the accrued interest, but at a lower rate. So, Scott, that was a lot of words to say it kind of depends on your time horizon, on your personal risk tolerance, and on your liquidity need. If this is money that you might need, maybe you don't have an emergency fund, and you might need this 10, 15 grand at some point in the near future. Well, that's a liquidity need. So once you balance your time horizon for this investment, your risk tolerance, and your need for liquidity, one of these ideas should jump off the page, and hopefully that's been of some help to you.
Yeah, great question, Scott. Thanks for sending that one in to us. I just want to highlight where you started, David, because I think that was just really wise. Hey, before we assume we're maxing everything out, let's make sure that we actually are, because our age may actually give us the opportunity to save more than we initially thought or are used to saving. So that's a good thing to double check before moving on to that litany of other options of what to do with that extra income. So very wise to always just make sure our assumptions are correct before moving forward. Well, there's one situation where there's some extra cash flow, an injection of cash that somebody gets to kind of work with in their budget now. And a little bit similarly, but from a different angle, our second question is also an injection of cash, but a little bit more all at once in a way. This question comes to us from Jim. And Jim says, my wife just received an inheritance and about half of it is in an IRA. I'm not clear on what our tax obligation is going to be on that portion, so can you help clarify that?
I can help clarify that, Jim. So you didn't ask about the non-IRA portion, so you probably know that depending on what type of asset that is, you likely don't have any, you wouldn't have, unless it's really, really, really big, you wouldn't have any inheritance tax on it. And depending on how you invest that money is depending on how it would be taxed. But if you just pulled that money out, unless it was an old annuity that the person she inherited from had, there might be some accrued interest that would be taxable. But the non-IRA portion, pretty easy from a tax standpoint. The IRA is actually totally simple from the tax standpoint, but what you need to first be clear on is the withdrawal rules. So the rules have gotten very complicated after the Secure Act was passed, and then the Secure Act 2 was passed. So it really depends on who you inherited the IRA from. So let's just say, so I know she didn't inherit it from her spouse because you are her spouse. Let's say that she inherited it from, first, let's start with the parent. What she is going to do is, what I'm guessing that she would want to do is roll that over into an inherited IRA. If she just takes the money, lump sum, then that's 100% taxable now. Let's say you don't need the money right now. You roll it over into an inherited IRA, and then she is under the 10-year withdrawal rule. So the money must be cleaned out by December 31st of the 10th year following the owner's death. Then the question, and then you might say, well, does she have to take money out during that 10-year period? And the answer is, it depends. If the original owner that she inherited from was already taking required minimum distributions, then she'll need to take required minimum distribution each year during the 10 years. She doesn't have to take out more than the required distribution, but she can't take out less, or else there are penalties involved. And that's just a table that you would find by doing a quick Google search, but it's based on her age. And at the end of the 10th year, whatever's left in the account has to be taken out in that year and taxed as ordinary income. If the owner was not taking required distribution, then your spouse is not required to take a required distribution during any of those first 10 years. She can take out as much or little as she wants, but she could wait until the very last day of the 10th year and take the entire distribution. So maybe as an example, you guys are 8 years away from retirement, and you're convinced that your tax bracket is going to be a lot lower 9 years from now once you're retired. So there's probably every reason from a tax standpoint to hold off on as many of the distributions as you can and take them when you're in a lower tax bracket. So there's a happy exception to this. Let's say that she inherited this money from a close friend or a sibling who died that was less than 10 years older than her. And that's just a goofy exception that they put into the law. But what it says is that if that's the case, she can still stretch that IRA withdrawal out over her own life expectancy. So if you're pretty sure that she inherited from somebody who was less than 10 years older than her, get some good advice on what you might be able to do with that IRA. All that being said, those are the withdrawal rules, how much she has to take. The actual taxing of the distributions, that's really simple. All distributions that come out of your inherited IRA or your IRA or any other tax-deferred account that you might have contributed through during your work years, those are all taxed. Every penny of it, the growth, the principal amount, every penny that comes out is taxed at your highest marginal tax bracket. And all that means is you can take a look at your last year's tax return and you can see, well, what was my total taxable income and what bracket did that put me in? So let's say you're married filing joint, which it sounds like you are, and the 22% bracket includes taxable income between $100,801 and $211,400. So let's say that your taxable income was exactly $100,000, just under the 22% bracket. And you want to take a $10,000 distribution out of this. What you should know is the entire $10,000 is going to be taxed at the 22% bracket, not the 12% bracket that you paid last year. So hopefully that is understandable. Your tax brackets are the same. Where you sit in your tax bracket is different for everybody. And if you're not, but if you were single, filing single, then you have yet a different tax bracket. So do some good research or get some good advice. And you know what? More money is better than less, even if you're paying, regardless of the tax rate you're paying on it. But my philosophy has always been, I want to pay every penny of tax that I owe, but not a penny more. So if there are tax smart ways to get this money out of this IRA, check it out.
I think that's great. Another really fantastic question. Thanks to both of our question askers today, Scott and Jim. If you've got a question similar to this, we can always feature it on a future episode of the show. You can certainly do that by just going to the website, creativeoneadvisorsgroup.com, and looking for the contact options there. Easy way to get in touch. And of course, you can just have one-on-one conversations about your financial life and retirement plans. Things like this are often what spark the planning process. Maybe Maybe it's an inheritance that you're going through. Maybe it's, hey, paid off the house, not sure what to do with the extra income. How can we make sure we're ready for retirement? These are the kinds of questions that lead to the full planning process many of the time. And it's called the Complete Planning Review. That's what David and his team at Creative One Advisors Group will take you through. They call it the CPR process for short. If you'd like to schedule a time to meet and talk a little bit about how they might be able to help your situation, you could do that by calling 913-317-1414 or going online to creativeoneadvisorsgroup.com. Contact information all linked in the description of today's show so you can find it easily. David, good nuances to think about and explore. Boy, anybody in a similar situation to those questions, you gave a lot of different possibilities and scenarios that would get the wheels turning, and I think get additional questions starting to be asked, no matter where somebody is kind of in that situation. So appreciate you taking us down a few different possibilities for each of those.
The longer you're in the business, the more you realize there are so many paths that you can go down. And every time Congress changed something in the law, almost never do they go back and clean something up. So there are a lot of nuances here. If there are benefits that you can take, then you owe it to yourself to explore them and make a good call for you and your family.
Kind of fun, if I can use that word, to have all of that creative problem solving at your disposal, at least for folks that are in your situation, David, who get to kind of look under the hood of these plans and kind of get into the nitty and gritty and enjoy that aspect of it. Fun that you can use some creativity to solve problems for folks and figure out the right solution for their situation. That's the neat part of all this, I guess.
It is. And along those lines, for next time, we have two more listener questions that I think are going to be equally as interesting. So we'll look forward to doing that one in a couple of weeks.
We've got one person talking themselves in a circle, another person expecting to retire next year. So some excitement maybe in both of those questions. Looking forward to exploring them on our next episode. So come back and join us next time right back here on Cover Your Assets KC. For David, I'm Walter. We'll see you again next time.
Creative One Advisors Group has been proudly serving families in the Kansas City metropolitan area since 2003. Over the years, we've evolved to help meet the needs of our clients, becoming KC Financial Advisors in 2010. In November 2021, our advisory business was acquired by Creative One Wealth, LLC, C1W, and in January 2025, we officially adopted the name Creative One Advisors Group. Previous episodes were recorded under the branding of KC Financial Advisors, which has since been rebranded as Creative One Advisors Group. Any references to KC Financial Advisors should now be understood as referring to Creative One Advisors Group. Investment advisory services are offered through Creative One Wealth, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Creative One Advisors Group is a DBA of Creative One Wealth. Insurance services are offered through licensed insurance professionals. Investment advisory services are provided in accordance with the fiduciary duty of care and loyalty that includes putting your interest first and disclosing conflicts. Insurance services have a best interest standard, which requires recommendations to be in your best interest. Creative One Wealth is not affiliated with or endorsed by any government agency and does not provide tax, legal, or estate planning advice or services. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No investment strategy can guarantee a profit or protect against loss. Neither asset allocation nor diversification can ensure a profit or guarantee against losses. None of the information contained herein shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit any offer to buy a security or any insurance product. Insurance product guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. The Creative One family of companies includes Creative One Wealth, LLC, a registered investment advisor, Creative One Securities, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor, and Creative One Marketing, LLC. These companies share common ownership. Additional details regarding advisory services are available in our firm's ADV Part 2A and Form CRS.